It turns out that you can, by doing data mining, you can find out which of your customers has a higher risk of getting cancer, right? So the question was, just because you sit on this knowledge as a drugstore, does that mean that you should communicate to your customers that, listen, based on your patterns and what you're buying from us, there's a risk that you are in a higher risk group of maybe getting cancer? And I mean, for me, the answer is a big no-no.
Welcome to Table Stakes. I'm Michel Stevens, course director at CXM Academy. Every email you get starts with your first name. Every website you visit shows your products you've already looked at. Every ad you see is supposedly tailored to you. And yet it all feels generic, impersonal, like a company is trying to trick you into thinking they know you when they really don't. And that's the personalization trap. Companies are confusing data with understanding. They're using technology to make things feel personal without actually being personal. My guest today is Rasmus Houlind, the author of the book Hello First Name. He's an authority on personalization who spent years helping companies to move beyond the Hello First Name trap to create genuinely useful, genuinely profitable personalization. Rasmus, welcome to Table Stakes.
Thank you so much, Michel. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, when this got into the books, I was really like, yes, finally, Rasmus is going to be on the podcast. No, but I kid you not, this morning I got an email and that said, hello, first name. And it was actually from a big SaaS provider. And
Yep.
I was like,
they got the syntax wrong. So it actually said first name. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's the irony of the title. And it just, for me, it's the gift that doesn't stop giving. It never stops giving because it's, I still get these, and some of the tech platforms you still have to like code Ginger scripts and shit. Sorry for the French to get like really simple stuff working like Hello First Name, and I think it's a parody to marketers.
Yeah, so I'm still on the fence. I don't know what to do with it. Should I reply gently to her like, "Hey, you made a big boo boo here on this email," or I don't know.
I think it's for me. I've asked myself the same question many times. And I think it's better not to. I mean, people know it. Once it's out, someone will reply on that. So really, stepping further onto their toes when they already know that they screwed up, kind of.
Yeah.
So I try to be gentle with people because we've all been there, And back in the old days when you did print, it was even worse, right? Because you spent so much money on print and stuff, and it was suddenly cut us out of the bag, and there was no going back.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with the with the first fundamental question. Actually, so what is personalization? That is a question that I hear a lot. There is a lot of confusion about that. So, why do most attempts at it feel like so shallow, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. But generally, I will say personalization is quite a broad spectrum of trying to give your customers a better experience than the average. So give them an experience that is more tailored to what you think they want and what they need. And that can be done like super individualized.
Yeah.
But that's hard. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of resources, but it gives you an experience that is second to nothing. But less can also do. So I would even say go to as far as to say that once in a while, by not sending everything to everybody all the time, that's also an act of personalization. And people don't notice this necessarily because they didn't get the email. So, but even that can be an act of personalization, because over time, if you imagine only ever hearing from a brand, if it's something that's super relevant to you, that's also a personalized customer experience.
Yeah. But that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about knowing their name; it's also knowing about what they need, right?
Totally.
Which means there is a core misunderstanding that keeps companies stuck, right?
And also, there's the trick that you cannot really know for sure, can you? No matter how much data we collect and how good our algorithms are and how much we're using Gen AI to personalize the response, you never know if you're being perceived as relevant, because you could, this is an example I often use, that say that you have all the insights and the algorithms are pointing towards me as a consumer being like super interested in dog food, right? And you're thinking, wow, this is how this message is so freaking relevant. It's going to be, Rasmus is going to be buying dog food forever now. But my dog died this morning, maybe. And then with the stroke of lightning, it's suddenly not relevant at all. Actually, it's just reminding me of how sad I feel.
Yeah.
So you can never really know for sure, but we can try and we can do our best to be perceived more relevant. But really, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, of course. And then it's also keeping yourself up to date and keep learning about that customer and what is the behavior actually that you can observe, right?
Yeah, many facets to it.
Yeah. So I wonder, what is the core misunderstanding companies have about personalization that keeps them stuck? It's not, I assume, and this is an assumption, it's not just about, I mean, there are a lot of organizations that know what personalization should be about, but something prevents them, right, from
Yeah.
actually doing something with it.
Yeah, I think there's a general conception that personalization is good. We try and make it more relevant, thus results could and should be better. And on that level, everybody sort of seems to agree. So on the headline level. But as soon as it comes down to sort of the practical nature of actually executing personalization and making it happen, then there are actually many, many forms of personalization. And if you confuse them amongst each other, then you end up thinking that you are doing the same, or that you realize what kind of personalization the other teams are doing. Everyone is sort of referring to this implicit accordance on what personalization is, but quite often they are talking about different things. I mean, some will be talking about how they're personalizing their campaigns, even their advertising, and that's personalized. While some will say, well, I mean, if we don't put like parameterized hello first name or the product you bought or whatever, if we don't put that into the email, then it doesn't count as proper personalization. And so again, some will say, oh, I mean, for me, personalization is about doing product recommendations on the website. And that's basically sort of my narrow window on perception on what personalization is. And if you put these people in the same room and if you want to make them agree on anything, they will believe that they agree and they'll speak the same language initially. But when it comes to play, they'll be having these quite different perceptions of it. And that's, I think, having the respect for the nuances in that and respecting that there are many forms of personalization and none of them are wrong as such, because they're all trying, they're aiming at the same end goal. But the way that you go about it is just completely different. And that's we kind of need to capture as organizations. The first thing to get in order before you can really, really start excelling at it. And then comes all the stuff about, getting your data ready and your insights ready. It's a big deal. Then it's about getting your content ready, which is something that actually a lot of companies are maybe neglecting or sort of at least postponing, because the data isn't ready anyway. So, we can easily get the content ready. And then when the data is suddenly ready and you have like the 100 perfect segments, you realize your content isn't ready at all. And then you just, okay, we need to go up the hill again once more before you then actually tie it together, which is also what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so they're basically waiting for a thing to happen, and there is never an end state of like, yeah, this is the moment that we're going for it, and we're going to, they're actually trying to be clever instead of trying to be effective, right? And I also think that,
You could put it that way.
yeah, and what I really like is that I think that there is where the personalization bow tie comes in. Can you walk us through that? Can you walk us through the personalization bow tie? How does it help teams to move from tactical to actually having a real strategic impact on?
As we just covered, personalization is actually a pretty broad umbrella term, and the frustrations that we just discussed is actually the reason for writing Hello First Name in the first place. I don't think you ever write a book unless you really have to, because it's kind of a painful process. So me and my co-author Frans Riemersma, we were fed up with this ambiguity of what personalization is. Came to the conclusion that basically all of these words that you see here on the screen, from even excluding people from ads or emails down to like an individualized credit statement from your energy company or whatever. Those are all personalizations. They're all acts of personalization. or doing product recommendations, as we talked about before. Those are also product recommendations. And to begin with, we thought that it would be really, really good if we could unite under a common sort of definition on what personalization is, and that would somehow solve our ambiguity and make it more nuanced if we just agree to what it is. But the thing is, and I mean, we spend a lot of time on that, and there is a definition in the book. But actually, we realized that the definition is kind of useless because it's so broad, because it has to cover all these things. So for the practitioners, it doesn't actually bring us any like specific guidance. It doesn't enable us to become better at what we should be doing tomorrow. So thus we found out that we needed this model for uniting these views on personalization. And thus we came up with the bow tie of personalization, because really what we found out is that personalization is about tying your insights together with your content.
Yeah.
So you have your insights over here, and this is the bow tie of personalization that you spoke of. I mean, the insights over here come in two parts, and the content comes in two parts that I'll go into more in depth. But basically, insights consist of your customer segments, so fairly static groups of customers, whether it's relating to like value-based segments, as in your RFM segmentation, or it's relating to your demographics, as in your personas and so on, or it can be relating to behavioral segments, people who use your services in much the same way or buy certain products along with, I mean, in clusters, basically. Or it can be moments of truth, which is much more about behavioral data. What's going on in the customer lifecycle right now? What is the customer considering, or what should they be considering that involves your brand, right? So combining the two of them, you had a pretty good picture of what's going on in the customer's life and how to speak to them. So imagine going to a party, right? And you meet this guy or girl or woman who seems to have all the insights and know everything about you and remember everything, but they don't know how to communicate. They don't have the content, so to speak. So every time they open their mouth, it's like, but they seem to know everything. Like, that's super creepy, right?
Yeah.
But actually, the opposite is also true. So you meet these sometimes call them crocodile people, because they have very small ears and a very, very big mouth. And they're talking. They have just continue talking about themselves without any insights, apparently, without listening. And that's equally wrong, right? So you need to have the balance here. And the content is divided in two also here. So you have the messages, which is whatever you want the customer to feel or to hear or to do. It's like, could be a call to action. It could be, yeah. It could be an experience even. It could also be helpful conversation with getting the customer to do something more easily. Or it could be your content feeds, and that would be either your content recommendations, as in product recommendations, or could be recipes or articles and so on. And really what you want to do is to tie all these four corners of the bow tie together. So in your communication, you consider the insights that will inform the intent of the customer, or the lack of intent for that matter. And you combine that with your content, with your messaging, and with your recommendations, basically. And that should give you an experience that is not only just a bit better than what people normally get, but actually like a real experience that they will, they'll feel accepted, they'll feel heard, they'll feel acknowledged, and
Yeah.
they'll feel spoken to as the individuals they are. And there will be a greater chance that this will be in line with what they really want.
Yeah, of course, because it's based on who they are and how they behave. So obviously it has to resonate with them. Okay, this is actually this looks like a very pragmatic model
Super
to
pragmatic. Yeah.
so I'm really excited to get my hands dirty and start with it myself. When can
Yeah.
you come over and
Yeah.
teach me your ways?
I mean, I'm available that day, Michel, of course. So I
Great.
do this all the time. I do work. Yesterday, I was in Norway doing a workshop on this, where we used the personalization cards, which is really like micro examples, bite-sized examples of these four corners of the bow tie here.
Yeah. So you have that model. You have thought about the segments, the moments of truth, the messages, content feeds. What's next? What are we going to do with that now? How do we tie it together, basically?
So, I mean, people are talking about hyper-personalization, right?
Mm.
It's a term that you've heard. And I think hyper-personalization happens when you're using all four corners of the bow tie to make sure that you make the best possible personalization. And I'll just give you an example of that. But realizing that you cannot hyper personalize everything to everybody all the time. But imagine also for the sake of example here that we are, for instance, with the industry. So let's take Viva Gym. It's a big fitness chain on the Iberian Peninsula. And I think for many a new fitness member, the moment of truth is, do I keep on with my New Year's resolution and finally get in shape? Do I go to the gym basically because I'm not that motivated anymore? Do I go to the gym actually? Or do I go and get more ice cream from the fridge? Right? So moment of truth, what's it gonna be, right? And you can have multiple types of persons, different personas that are experiencing this moment of truth. So you can have the young man who's working out to get buff, obviously, but you could also have senior citizens that are working out not for the sake of getting big and getting shredded or jacked or whatever, but for the sake of longevity and of health and so on. And the content feeds, I mean, the content feeds that you'd use to one segment will be different than towards the other, right? So the sort of elderly senior citizen here, it could be my mother. She's like 70, 79, and she's working out for health reasons. You don't ask her to go and attend like really hardcore strength exercises and so on.
Mm.
So it'd be more like general body mind classes like yoga, Pilates, and the exercises will be generally more machine focused and less on free weights and bench presses. But the idea here is that you cannot hyper personalize everything to everybody all the time. So really what you do with the bow tie is that you look at it from mainly three different angles, I would say. So either you are focused on personalizing your website, and if that's the case, first of all, you'll be spending a lot of time doing like basic CRO first, like getting the core customer experience dialed in. I mean, so you provide the best average experience to the unknown customer, where you allow them the chances that they can navigate and they can self-service and they can use your search function and whatnot. But when it comes to personalization, it's very much a matter of getting the right content feeds in front of the right people and getting the right headlines with the right articles or the right products in front of the right people.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are in campaigns, it's a lot about focusing on the top of the bow tie here. I mean, we're working outbound. We're basically disturbing people, right? That's what a campaign is. It's not because there's something going on with the customer right now that we really want to touch upon, but we are trying to get a message across that will catch their attention. And we'll do that by making sure that the variant of the message corresponds to the segment that we're communicating to, and maybe also to some contextual stuff that's going on right now. So maybe it's Christmas, or maybe it's Easter, or maybe it's, just the weekend is approaching, or maybe it's payday. So there can be many ways of sort of making sure that the message corresponds to the segment and the context that we are trying to address here. And that will increase the perception of relevance. And then you have in the middle, you have a marketing automation. So we are basically looking into the customer lifecycle and the moments of truth. The insights here are very much built on behavioral data. Could also be like an algorithm, like predictive analytics, that is deciding for you who is maybe about to churn and what can we do about it. And that will ultimately inform the message that we are then sending outbound to the customer, whether it's on email or it's a push notification or it's a text message or an RCS message, really. So that's sort of three ways that you can use the bow tie to inform your ways of working with personalization. And I think circling back to our conversation before about the misconceptions between different team members, that often comes because your job title says a lot about which of these personalization disciplines that you are most likely inclined to be working with, and also what you should be focusing on. But it will also show you what you shouldn't be focusing on, and that there exists other forms of personalization, and you should have the respect for them being sort of equally good and equally true and valid forms of personalization, and thus knowing what it is that you're not doing.
Yeah, that's actually super practical. I mean, it's that you're not just thinking about personalization in the abstract, but actually I can see that come alive, basically. I even see it come alive here for myself, right? But there is a tension there. You need data to personalize, right?
Totally.
But you also need to respect privacy. And my question is, how do you balance the need for data with the need for privacy in today's environment, basically?
I mean, it's all about consent, isn't it?
Hmm.
But it's also about, I mean, realizing which topics that it would be natural for your brand to address explicitly with a customer. So there was a case actually some months ago where someone brought it up to me, where it was some kind of scientists. They had looked at stuff that you can buy in a drugstore, right, or in a like a beauty health pharmacist. It turns out that you can by doing data mining on that, you can find out which of your customers has a higher risk of getting cancer, right? So the question was, just because you sit on this knowledge as a drugstore, does that mean that you should communicate to your customers that, listen, based on your patterns and what you're buying from us, there's a risk that you are in a higher risk group of maybe getting cancer? And for me, the answer is a big no-no, because this conversation rests totally outside what you would expect from a customer relationship between this retailer and the topic of cancer.
Yeah.
That's just not a conversation that you're having with your drugstore. And thus, it will be totally out of place to have that conversation. I'll give you another example. So saying that you are, so you have a bank, and you as a customer, you are browsing different pages on the web page, which may or may not indicate that you could be considering or maybe even facing or going through a divorce. Say that the bank then reaches out to you, so that could be a sort of a case of marketing automation. Wow, it looks like you are going through a divorce, Jill. I mean, how would you how would you experience that? I mean, for me at least, I would be very offended by that. That would feel super creepy, even though all the sort of legal consents might be sort of in place. So first of all, they're assuming stuff. I could be, browsing for a friend, basically. So they're doing the sin here of assuming things based on my patterns. So assuming that they know what my data is indicating.
Yeah.
And also, if I hadn't told them about divorce and that I needed help for my divorce, they better stay the F out of my way and not be creepy. Snitching on me. So that would be totally out of place. But then comes the distinction between explicit personalization and implicit personalization. Because, addressing this explicit with me, saying, hey, looks like you are super interested in divorce stuff. How can we help you? That would maybe come across as a bit creepy. But they could do it more implicitly and just, send me what appears to be a newsletter, which says this week's theme, going through a divorce. How can your bank help you when you're going through a divorce? So make it seem more like a coincidence, really, that something is going on about divorce. And this just happens to be the week's theme. That might go down more easily, right? Because then I'll be, oh, wow, what a coincidence. And there's a higher chance that I will be interested in this because I did browse all their pages on how to manage your finances going through a divorce.
Yeah.
Which I'm not, by the way. I should say I'm very happily married.
Neither am I.
Yeah. Just to give you some ideas of, where do we step over the boundaries of creepy? And I think that, yes, I said it comes down to the consent, but keep in mind that there's also an emotional consent. And if you overstep that, the customer doesn't care about your legal stuff, right? Broke sort of the contract with them from an emotional point of view. And that's actually even worse.
Yeah, it can be personal and respectful. That's what it all boils down. It's a social contract that you have between you and an organization.
Totally.
Which actually brings me back to the practical question for a marketing leader or a customer experience leader stuck in the hello first name trap that we spoke about before. What's the first thing they should focus on? How do they go about it?
Yeah, I think actually, I think the first step is getting across that ambiguity and getting into this more nuanced way of talking about personalization. So maybe using the bow tie to, making sure everybody reads it or that everybody agrees on this. It's a very simple model. So, I don't expect it to necessarily teach people new angles of personalization, because everybody can relate to the sort of components in it. But just using that as I say, okay, now we're using this definition and we are using the sub definitions within that to make sure that when we're talking about this, everybody knows what is what. And I think that's the first part of, we need to agree on what it is that we're talking about. If we don't agree on that, we basically don't agree on anything. And everything will turn into rubbish from then on. So that would be my first advice. And then maybe secondly, it will be about sort of figuring out, because there's a lot of investments in personalization, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tech in it as well. And me coming from agility is no exception. And I've seen a lot of good implementations of personalization. I've also seen quite a lot of implementations fail.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's the sort of the IT trap that people are falling into, that they want to build a MarTech stack, and they want to have a MarTech stack that can cover, because they may not know exactly what they want to do. They just want to do personalization. So they want a stack that can do everything. Every conceivable personalization use case. So yeah, so they go nuts in terms of that, and they often end up like buying a big suite, over-investing like in a big suite of personalization products that do all kinds of stuff. And what I've found is that taking a more use case-based approach to this is a really good way of doing this. And I think that's maybe why I invented the personalization cards, actually.
So happy that you bring them up, because you mentioned them in the beginning of the conversation. And I was like, yeah, what are these cards? So how does that work? You said something like they're the practical execution of your bow tie, or how did I?
Yeah.
What are they?
So what I found with the bow tie of personalization, also and with the book, at first I wrote the original version of the book a bit more than 2 years ago, and the bow tie was then exactly what it is now. So that part didn't change. It's still about realizing what is it that you want to say to whom. Basically, that's still the core of personalization. I don't think that will ever change. But I then had the idea that, okay, so we have this model, and if I, make people read the book or listen to the book, then I had the idea that then suddenly people will start building fantastic use cases with personalization, right? And in some cases it did happen, but more often than I'd like to believe, it didn't. I thought that that's the model. You understand it. Now go and do it, right? And it turns out that it kind of didn't. And I realized that just having the model is one thing. The model is born bottom up. And I realized last summer that actually sometime before, but the last summer I finally took the effort of actually making this movement down again. So making sure that keeping the structure of the model and turning that into sort of bite-sized examples that you can then use to play around. That's what the cards are. Yeah, I'm inviting you, everybody who's listening to this, to actually there's a free tool that you can use on this. Obviously, you can buy a deck of cards and workshop it out with yourself. You can even hire me to come and do it with you. So yeah, as I said before, one thing is having a model you understand, and models are good to clarify understanding and so on. But it's really the examples that inspire us, right? So I took the effort. Made the effort of actually coming up with more than 800 micro examples, so bite-sized examples of the different corners here of the bow tie. So I did a full day workshop yesterday in Norway with around 20 marketers. Some are representing the insight side of things. Some are more on the content side of things. Some are working with campaigns. Some are more into marketing automation. But really uniting these people in sort of conversations and really putting the cards on the table on, okay, so what are our most important segments? Having those discussions. What are our most important moments of truth? And do we have the content that matches? And
I cannot wait to get my hands on them and try it out myself. And I think that we have plenty of opportunity in the next months
totally,
to dive into that.
I have this feeling that this year is going to be, me putting the cards on the table all year, because it's pretty hefty at the moment, I would say.
All right, I cannot wait to get into a workshop with you in the next few months. Really, there is already one in the books, and I'm sure that many others will follow. But yeah, thanks, Rasmus. That's it.
Please.
I think it's all about stop trying to be clever and start trying to be useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and for showing us that true personalization is about understanding. This was Table Stakes. Until next time, here or in our courses. See you.